we're here to talk about careers in languages, and I'm really excited to be able to chat to you as an old school friend of mine. We both studied languages at A-level together, so could you just introduce yourself a little bit and tell us where you are now?
Yep, of course. So my name's Rebecca Letvan, or Becky for short. I am currently in Laos, which is next to Thailand, in the capital Vientiane.
Brilliant. And what did you study at university?
So at university, I studied French, Spanish, and linguistics. So that was modern European languages and linguistics, which included, it was a 4-year course. It included a year abroad in France, in Nice, and in Valencia in Spain as well. And I actually started Spanish from scratch at uni. Like, I didn't speak any Spanish beforehand, but I'd done French A-level at school. So, and also English language, which was kind of related to linguistics as well.
Brilliant. Okay. And could you tell us what your current job is?
So my current job is I'm the country director in Lao PDR, which is, as I say, it's a country next door to Thailand, north of Cambodia, and with Vietnam to the east. I'm country director for an organization, it's a global charity actually, called Minds Advisory Group, or MAG. So it's a charity that has its headquarters in Manchester, and we work in more than 25 countries all across the world, usually or almost always in countries that have been impacted by conflict. So either there might be conflict ongoing, or the conflict might have just finished, or in the case of Laos, the conflict finished in like the 1970s, but it's countries that are impacted by what we would call unexploded ordnance. So basically unexploded bombs, landmines, and other items like that that just unfortunately get left behind after conflict. And what MAG does is quite simply we clear them, we remove them, so we can make that land available for people to grow crops, for agriculture. You know, for example, we remove items from schools so that it's safe for kids to go to school, from health clinics so that people can access healthcare. Yeah, so in a nutshell, that's what we do. And I'm the country director, which means that I always describe it as basically being like a head teacher, and kind of have oversight of the entire program.
Fantastic. How did you get into that?
So I did my modern languages degree at uni. Then I did a master's in international development. That was in Manchester. And then I actually started as an intern with MAG. So it was 2 days a week, unpaid, at the office in Manchester. And actually genuinely one of the main reasons that they selected me for that position were my language skills, because I spoke French and Spanish. And a lot of our programs are in French-speaking areas of the world or Spanish-speaking areas of the world. So yeah, I started off as an intern. I then got a job in the office in Manchester, covering or providing support to various programs, most of them French or Spanish-speaking. And then I moved overseas about 10 years ago, initially to Central America. Again, because I spoke Spanish, and yeah, I've just kind of moved around ever since.
And as a long-term friend, I know how often you've moved around, but would you like to share with us how many different countries you've lived in thanks to your job?
Oh gosh, I'll have to count. So I was in Central America for 2 years, so that was at El Salvador and Honduras. Then I was in French-speaking Africa for 2 years, so Chad and Burkina Faso, which most people have never even heard of. I don't think I had before I went there. Then I moved to the Middle East and was in Lebanon, and then 2 years in Iraq. And then most recently, I've just continued the progression kind of east, and I've been in Asia, so Cambodia and now Laos. So that's 8 countries I've lived in 10 years, which is
That's
mad.
amazing. And your language learning didn't stop at university, did it? You've taken on an extra language. Tell us about that.
Well, yeah, so since I left university, I also learned Arabic. I certainly wouldn't suggest that I'm fluent in Arabic, but I actually went to Morocco and did an intensive course, a 2-month intensive course in learning Arabic in Fez, the city of Fez, and then continued that whilst I was doing my master's in the evenings. And then obviously it kind of, as I say, I would never say that I'm fluent, but it did stand me in good stead when I was in Lebanon, when I was in Iraq, which are obviously Arabic-speaking countries as well.
Amazing. So could you tell us a little bit about how your language skills have enabled you to do the job that you do? Tell us a little bit about what you do that involves your language skills.
Well, in the current position at the moment, the posting that I'm in is actually primarily English speaking. And I'm ashamed to say that my Lao language skills are quite poor. But I do use a little bit of French occasionally, but not so often because it is an English speaking country, or not country, program, should I say. So, you know, with all our staff, we speak English. But certainly when I was in Central America and when I was in West Africa, I mean, I literally couldn't have done my job without speaking the language. So the working language in the office was Spanish or French. You know, I'd use it on a daily basis to communicate with locally contracted staff, so our national colleagues, other international colleagues, you know, in Chad, for example, and Burkina Faso, I was mostly working with French speakers. I needed it to liaise with government authorities, national authorities, suppliers, basically any sort of external communication and internal communication, French or Spanish. So it was kind of essential.
Absolutely. And do you feel that you've learnt any other skills aside from actually being able to speak those languages, any other skills that you can sort of recognise as being useful in your job now that you have learned as a language learner?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the key one, and it's such an obvious one, but you know, at the moment, I'm the country director of a program with 1,300 staff. And even though I'm not speaking in French or Spanish on a daily basis, that communication is so important. And, you know, communicating with staff across the program, understanding as well. I think one thing that you do learn when you're a language learner, you really learn what people who don't speak English as a first language really need when you're talking to them. So, you know, you learn how to adapt your speech, how to talk a little bit differently, make it easier to understand, lose the accent a little bit at times. Even things like recently, you know, we tend to wear face masks in the office. But, you know, I understand that if you're speaking in your second language, it's so hard to understand people if you can't see the lips. So I always, with permission, take my mask off so that people can get those kind of non-verbal cues as well. So I think just communication in general is really important. And then, yeah, just being able to, the skill of kind of picking up on things like cultural cues, you know, kind of maybe undercurrents in conversation and that kind of thing have been really important as well.
Definitely. Language learning is a lot more than just learning words, isn't it? You learn about a different culture and a different way of communicating. Yeah.
Precisely.
Okay, so what is the hardest thing that you've ever had to do in your professional career?
Oof. There's a lot. Yeah, there's been kind of, I mean, I think one of the hardest things that, unfortunately, because of the type of sector that we work in. We're reliant on funding from outside and particularly from governments. So the funding and job security situation is never 100% stable. And one thing that I've actually had to do recently here, and you know, it's fairly common, is unfortunately, if the funding runs out, you have to make people redundant and you have to go through that redundancy selection process. And it's just so hard going to a base and meeting with staff and telling them that they're likely to be out of a job. And especially, I think, in a place like this where there's no sort of social security, there's no safety net. You can't just sort of sign on and get the dole money or anything like that. And, you know, there's real limited opportunities for jobs. So I always find that really hard. Also, just being in Iraq in general, as you know, I spent 2 years in Iraq at a time when there was conflict absolutely raging, and we were working with people who'd basically fled from Mosul, which was being bombed at the time. They'd lived through some really, really horrific experiences. And that time in general, some of the things that we saw and we heard and we experienced, that was really tough. And it wasn't something that I had to do, but it was something that, you know, I experienced. And that was certainly the hardest, I think, listening to those people who'd immediately sort of escaped conflict and like seeing how they were impacted as well.
Yeah, definitely. And for your friends and family at home, it was hard knowing that you were in that country and yeah, worrying about you a lot, I have to say. Okay, so what is the coolest thing that you've ever had to do or you've had the privilege to do in your job?
Oh, so many. And, you know, the entire job is really quite cool. And I think sometimes there's a lot of really hard days and there's a lot of long days. But if I look back and think about sort of the experiences that I've had, and even just it's, you know, a regular experience for me to be able to go to the bases, to go to the fields, and to be on the ground with our teams, and you put on the full protective gear, right? And the what we call personal protective equipment, the protective vests, the helmets, and actually go out into a minefield or into an area that is contaminated with bombs. To see that, and there's always the opportunity, or there's quite frequently the opportunity to blow stuff up. Which is great. So you get to press the button and make a big bang, and it's really cool. I mean, who gets to do that? And then there's the kind of things that it's not work directly, but it's experiences that I've had through work that you would just never, ever normally have, you know, like traveling to the Congo and sitting by the Congo River whilst the sun's setting with a nice cold beer and kind of looking out at this sunset. And it's incredible, and people would pay like thousands of dollars to do that. Or again, in Iraq, like I say, it was such a tough time, but at the same time, you get these experiences like if you get some downtime, being able to go to like a Yazidi town where there's these Yazidi shrines and this really unique sort of religious and spiritual place that normally you never get to go to, right? So it's not, I mean, there's loads of really cool stuff that I get to do at work, great travel, and, you know, the job itself is really interesting. But then it's also everything else that goes with it as well, I think.
Definitely, yeah. Okay, so what is the best bit about speaking your languages? We're going to go with Spanish and French. We'll discount Arabic for now.
So I think the best bit is just, and especially sort of in relation to, you know, my career path, is the doors that it opens and the opportunities that it gives you, right? And just being able to have, I would never have had these opportunities in this sector that is so hard to get into without knowing those languages and without learning those languages. And it's not just the opportunity to you know, progress in your career, but it's also really the fact that if I'm in a country and when I'm in a country and you speak the language, you just get so much more out of the professional experience and just out of the experience in general, you know, being able to talk to your locally contracted staff and learn about their lives. And okay, you're never going to be fully integrated into that culture, and I think it would be a bit naive to think that you could be, but you know, you just learn so much more about their cultures and their way of life that I honestly don't think that you'd get without languages, without being able to speak the language and communicate with them directly. I just don't think you'd get it.
Yeah, okay. Where do you see yourself in 10 years' time?
I have no idea. I think, I mean, I've been overseas for 10 years now, and there's been certainly challenging times, and there's also been some amazing times, and you know, I have really enjoyed it. I do want to go back to the UK, certainly in the medium term, because I also really, really miss my friends. I really, really miss my family, and that certainly gets harder, I think, the longer you are away. So probably in the UK, I'd like to think still with a job with quite extensive travel, using my languages, kind of going back to French and Spanish, but let's see, who knows?
On verra. Brilliant. Okay, one last question. If you could sum up language learning in 5 words exactly, what would they be?
So I actually looked at this already, and I didn't know whether you wanted a sentence or just 5 individual words, but I've gone for 5 individual words, right? So I think opportunity, like I already mentioned, because I do really think that it opens up so many opportunities, and not just career-wise, like friendship-wise and travel and romantically as well. Let's not forget that. You know, there's just so much opportunity there. I think respect, because obviously through learning a language, you're taking the time to learn a language and the effort and the energy, you know, you're demonstrating a respect for a people's language, a people's culture, and also you get it back in return, right? You know, so what you give in that area, you also get back. Freedom, I think it provides so much freedom, learning a language, because you know, the obvious one is to travel, but also freedom to work and freedom just to make more choices sort of in your life path and your career pathway. I think it's empowering, not just being able to communicate with other people, but I think in general it just empowers you to do so much more, and also can be a real confidence builder as well. And finally, probably an obvious one, but it's so connecting. And it really, and I think it sounds cheesy, but I think in today's world, this is so important that we're kind of building those bridges and trying to connect with other people and other languages and learn about them and learn about their culture and where they come from. And yeah, so they're my 5 words.
Sum those up for us again, those 5.
I've gone for opportunity, respect, freedom, empowering, and connecting.
Super, that's excellent. Thank you so much for your time, Rebecca, and we'll speak to you again soon. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.